Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing another featured car review, and this time we're looking at the 2018 Audi S3. This is a facelift model, which means a mid-model refresh, and personally this car is pretty near and dear to me. So let's dive in and take a look at why this car is featured this week. So as I mentioned, this car is kind of near and dear to me, and that's actually because this is my car. I actually just purchased it, so I think I'm a pretty good source to talk about why it's a special car and why I made this purchase. As I mentioned, this is a 2018 model, so this is a new to me car that I bought. It was used for about 16 months by the previous owner, and I must say they spec'd it pretty dang well. The color you're seeing here is Aura Blue. Other options that you'll notice visually are the black optics package as well as the carbon fiber package, which is a very rare find and also a pretty expensive option. The total MSRP of this car in 2018 was $55,000. For anyone familiar with the S3, you'll know it comes in a Premium Plus package or a Prestige package. This is actually the Premium Plus, but has literally every option you could choose, which is why it comes to $55,000, which is actually a little bit more than you could spec a Prestige for. Some of the differences between a Premium Plus and a Prestige is that the Prestige will have HomeLink garage door openers, power folding mirrors, as well as adaptive cruise control. But those are really the only other features that you cannot get in a Premium Plus. The Prestige just comes with all the options as standard. But in this video, we're going to do an in-depth review and detailed look at the Audi S3, looking at the exterior, interior, and features, as well as explaining why I think this is a vehicle worth featuring in this week's video review. Visually on the exterior, one of the first things you'll notice is the beautiful LED daytime running lights. The entire headlight assembly is all LED, including fog lights and high beams, which is a very nice feature that makes it feel very modern and kind of future-proofs the vehicle, if you will, so that it doesn't feel dated in a few years when full LED headlights become mainstream. Part of the black optics package is the full blacked out front grille. And then across the lower part where you normally find fog lights is actually some air intakes for cooling, some radiators and fins behind there, as well as some ducting into the wheel wells to help airflow around the brake. The fog lights for the vehicle are actually integrated into the headlight here. Just below the headlights, you'll see the headlight washer on either side. Those will come on when you activate the windshield washers. Moving back in the vehicle, one of the features that this vehicle has, which is actually very rare, is the carbon fiber package that comes from the factory. So we have carbon fiber mirror caps and a glossy finish, which is absolutely beautiful, as well as the carbon fiber deck lid spoiler in the back, which looks very similar to what you'd find on an RS3. Part of the black optics package is also larger 19-inch wheels, as you can see here on the Audi S3. These are kind of a darker silver titanium finish, wrapped in 235/35 Continental Sport summer tires. Looking at the vehicle in totality, it's really sort of an understated look. It's not super aggressive, but when you look closer and see it in person, you start to notice some of the finer details that signal some of the aggression or sportiness of the vehicle. In particular, you'll notice these side skirts, which have a nice protrusion from the side of the vehicle, some nice angles to them, as well as this beautiful body line that carries across all the way from the front to the back. And that sharp corner really helps just create a sporty look to the vehicle. Another piece of black optics package I like to point out is the black surrounds around the windows. Normally this would be kind of a chrome finish, as you see in most vehicles. Black optics package blacks that out for you, gives a really nice clean look, and matted with this Aura Blue, it looks absolutely beautiful. In the back again, we have a square setup, so we have again 235/35s in the back, sport summer tires on the 19-inch wheels. The rear brakes are quite a bit smaller than the front brakes, which doesn't necessarily look the best, but it is what it is. You'll also notice that we have red brake calipers. This is indicative of the sport package for the Audi S3, which includes Audi's magnetic ride, meaning you can adjust the firmness of the shocks and the dampers from the selection within the vehicle for Audi's Drive Select. Now wrapping around to the back of the vehicle, this is where we see the beautiful carbon fiber deck lid spoiler, which again is very similar to the RS3 and also has the gloss finish. In the back, we have full LED taillights with sequential turn signals. The sequential turn signals were added for the facelift models, 2017 and up. And again, like the headlights, really does a great job of helping to modernize this vehicle and really make it fit in with vehicles of today as well as vehicles of the next several years. Across the back, we have pretty simple badging for Audi as well as the S3. These are chrome despite having a black optics package. I do wish those were blacked out. And then across the back is where we can see some more of the aggression of the S3 with the quad exhaust tips, where the regular A3 would have dual outlet single tip exhaust. We also have a more aggressive rear splitter and you can even hear, as I get closer here, a little bit more of a rumble from the vehicle. So this does have an active exhaust. When we put it in dynamic or sport mode, the valves will open up at idle like this, and also when we get above 3,000 RPM, or we have a heavy input to the throttle. But you can also switch to comfort mode, which will keep the exhaust quieter, the RPMs lower, and make it a nice vehicle to drive home into your neighborhood late at night, for example, without waking all the neighbors. I should also mention now that when we get into the driving portion, you hear this vehicle is also equipped with the factory resonator delete. So the exhaust is a bit louder than some other S3s you might hear, and it does feel pretty sporty, but it is a stock exhaust. Across the back, we of course have rear parking sensors to complement the front parking sensors, as well as a rear backup camera mounted underneath the trunk. Overall, the back has a pretty nice look and some pretty nice proportions. The trunk is pretty short in terms of the depth from the back of the vehicle to where the rear glass starts. And this is not necessarily because the trunk is tiny, but rather the roof slope ties nicely into the trunk, and we have a very nice flowing design, which is somewhat reminiscent of the newer A5 Sportback variants. Also on the exterior of the vehicle, we will find a panoramic sunroof, which is standard on all S3 models. So with this glass, it does open and slide back right to the shark fin antenna. Opens up nicely. So one of the reasons why I decided to feature this vehicle and personally buy this vehicle is because there's not really a lot of vehicles like it in this segment. As well as it's just a very flexible, modifiable, but also reliable platform. This platform is shared with the Volkswagen Golf, the GTI, and the Golf R, for example. And to someone like me, an automotive enthusiast, it offers a lot of options for modifying and customizing it. So if you're interested in following my build with this vehicle, I encourage you to check out my personal YouTube channel. It's just called Fox. It's linked here, where you can follow along with my build of this Audi S3 as I modified over the coming foreseeable future, as well as my friend's build of his 2019 Subaru WRX STI. But that really wraps up the tour of the exterior of the vehicle, so let's start looking at the interior. We'll start with the trunk and kind of work our way forward throughout the vehicle, look at some of the infotainment and features, and then finally wrap up by driving the vehicle. We can pop the hood back here. It opens by itself all the way nice and full, so we have easy access into it. Even though it does open full like this, the trunk lid is actually still pretty low just because it's such a low, small vehicle. So you are still kind of ducking to bring stuff in. As you can see here, I currently have the trunk full of all my camera gear for filming this vehicle, and when I move this out of here, you can kind of get a sense for how big the trunk is. It's not necessarily massive or offer a lot of height, but it is pretty deep for the size vehicle it is. So you can easily fit a full-size suitcase inside of here. Down below, we do have a spare tire. It is by no means a full-size spare, but it does come with a spare rather than a fix-a-flat kit. And then from the trunk, we can also see the subwoofer for the Bang & Olufsen sound system in here, which is a very small pancake-style open-air subwoofer. Personally, we'll talk about this more when we get into the interior, but this is sort of the weak spot of the sound system. But let's close the trunk and move to the interior of the vehicle. Climbing into the rear of the vehicle, it is quite a bit smaller, but this front seating position is where I would normally sit. I'm 5'8", so I'm not especially tall, but sitting back here, it's actually pretty comfortable. I'm sitting pretty upright now, so I only have about an inch or two of headroom, but there are nice cutouts in these sport seats in front of me. But if I slouch back to a more casual seating position like I normally would in the back of the vehicle, I have enough headroom. It's a little tight, but I still have plenty of knee room. So the unfortunate thing is that your rear seat passengers will probably be forced to slouch a bit because you run out of headroom before you do knee room. However, this is still a very usable rear seat for a quick trip, but it's certainly not meant to be a road trip vehicle for 4 full-size adults. In the back, we do have climate controls here in the center. We do not have temperature controls, but you can adjust the fan speed. Temperature is tied to the front. The dual tone colors of the interior tie back nicely into the rear with our dual tone doors with the Bang & Olufsen sound system, brushed aluminum accents, and some nice padded leather materials on the doors. Automatic windows, reading lights back here, pretty much the normal amenities you expect in any Audi or BMW class of vehicle back here. Since this has the sport seats, we do have the upgraded Nappa leather throughout the vehicle with some nice quilted leather stitching. There's also a center armrest with 2 cup holders built into it. And overall, if you need more storage space, these seats do fold down completely flat and tie into the level of the trunk, allowing for plenty of storage for bigger items like snowboards or golf bags, for example. But let's be honest, you don't exactly buy an Audi S3 for the experience of the backseat passengers. You buy it for the driver's experience. So let's waste no more time and let's get into the driver's seat, take a look at the features of the interior up front, and then we'll get into driving it to see why exactly you would buy an Audi S3. So inside the Audi S3, we have a pretty driver-centric setup. The center controls here with climate controls as well as MMI controls, volume knob, all that stuff is very centrally located, slightly canted towards the driver but very accessible by the passenger. But the main feature of the interior, especially on the facelift models, is the virtual cockpit, which is an option on Premium Plus models and standard on the Prestige models. But this model is obviously equipped with the virtual cockpit, which again is another one of those features I really like because it helps just make the car feel so modern and it's not going to be outdated in 3 years. So we might as well start our tour by looking at the virtual cockpit because that's really the thing that stands out most to you in the vehicle. I'm sure most of you are kind of familiar with the virtual cockpit by now or have at least seen it before, but most of your controls are actually going to be here on the left side of the steering wheel. And it's really a pretty simple system despite all the features it has because there's really two different modes. There's this mode where the auxiliary information such as radio, vehicle information, your map, things like that are primary and in the center with your gauges on either side. Or you reverse that and you have the sport mode, which is only available in S or RS models, where the tachometer takes the center with your digital speedometer in the middle and your auxiliary information on either side. So the additional information that you can feature would be your radio settings, phone information, we can dial your contacts or go through typical phone information in the infotainment, and then also the map system, which we're all kind of accustomed to seeing because it's just this beautiful display of a large map, as well as then vehicle information. Some of you may remember that Audi really liked to show off their Google Earth view in this virtual cockpit system and in their new MMI system. And while this is an option on any vehicle with virtual cockpit, it's actually part of a paid subscription called Audi Connect, so that's why I don't have on this vehicle. Other information is displayed in the bottom left and bottom right, which shows your coolant temperature as well as your gas gauge. Kind of touring around the rest of the vehicle, on the left side you have your typical light information, which obviously this vehicle is equipped with automatic lights, but you also have your options for your fog lights here as well as your rear fog lights. Moving across to the door, we have the beautiful two-tone interior with the Bang & Olufsen system. You'll have your tweeters up in the pillar here, and then your mid-sub in the door and your lower sub down here with a lit accent, so when the headlights are on, that line there that you'll kind of see, that white line, illuminates at night, so it looks really nice with the footwell lights and the other ambient lighting in the interior of the vehicle. But this vehicle is equipped with the rotor gray sport seats, so all the leather in the interior is that rotor gray color. You have a leather material on the doors here, and then all the seats are finished in a fine Napa leather with some quilted accents that are typical of the sport seats, with the S embroidered in the rear of the seats as well. On the passenger side, it pretty much mirrors the driver's side minus some of the mirror and window controls that's typical. And across the dash we have the circular air vents, which are kind of typical of the 3 Series for Audi. In the center stack here we have a retractable screen, which we can retract just by pressing this button down here and pops out. It automatically retracts when you power off the vehicle and exit. On the screen is a pretty typical Audi MMI system. This is the MMI Touch, so it's controlled down by here. The touch means that this is a touch sensitive surface, so you can use it to interact in some ways. Would be by writing letters or numbers when you're entering addresses or any information into the MMI. But otherwise, it's your typical dial system with your menu back keys, a couple option keys, and then your quick shortcuts to your main menus. Media is controlled through here where you can hit this dial left and right to skip forward and back, as well as just turn it for your volume. And your push button start is actually down here as well with a nice red ring accent in the S models. While we're down here, I'll also hit on the transmission. This is a 7-speed dual clutch transmission. The pre-facelift models of the S3, so up through 2016, use a 6-speed dual clutch, but I think stepping up to the 7-speed is a huge improvement to the drivability of the vehicle. Having that extra gear and the space in the gears just makes it a much smoother experience. Up front, as you can see, we have 2 cup holders. These are pretty usable in size actually for taller cans like a Monster or a water bottle, and they hold it pretty tight to keep it in place for more spirited driving, which is nice. Up front, there's also a small compartment. It's not really big enough to place a phone. At least I have a larger phone, so it doesn't work for me, but it's a good place to put your keys or small things like that. as well as a 12-volt outlet there and a USB port, which I use for Apple CarPlay. The new generation of Audi S3 comes standard with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Then moving up, we have our climate controls, which again is another area in photos I thought looked kind of cheap, but seeing it in person, the colors and the feel of the buttons is actually really nice. Even the screen is like a decent quality resolution. But we have our pretty rudimentary controls. The sport seats are also heated, which is a nice feature to have here in Minnesota. But otherwise, you have dual zone climate control, automatic, and all your pretty typical climate control features. Moving up here, we have a couple quick switches, which is what we can use for our hazards. We can use this to pull up our parking sensors information so we can see our rear camera as well as the display of the parking sensors all around the vehicle. So it's nice that we can manually toggle that. It also automatically comes up when you are parking your car, say pulling up to a curb at slow speed, or when your car is in reverse. Here we have a toggle switch to turn off the automatic start stop feature. This is also automatically turned off whenever the car is in dynamic mode. And we have our Audi Drive Select, so we can toggle this to toggle through our different driving modes. There's comfort, automatic where the vehicle kind of decides for you, and dynamic mode. I normally leave in dynamic for myself, but your mileage may vary. The only thing that's left really is the controls are up here, which are simply just your overhead lighting controls. There's some microphones for the MMI system, as well as your controls for the sunroof. The shade for the sunroof is manual. However, as kind of a nice feature, it's actually a perforated material, as you can kind of see there. So it does screen the light, but it means you can actually open the sunroof while this is closed. You still get in fresh air, but it helps filter the sunlight so you're not getting direct sunlight with the sunroof open. I thought that was kind of a neat feature that I hadn't seen before. So taking a closer look at the sport seats, they are nice quilted leather with a fixed headrest, as you see. And then, as I mentioned, these are the upgraded Napa leather seats, which are only available in the sport seats. So one weird caveat with these sport seats is that they're actually manually adjusted. It does have power lumbar, which is 4-way adjustable, which is very nice, but your rear seat recline and all these features are actually manual. It still has all the normal adjustments you expect in any seat, but they're all manual. And this is all actually done to save weight, which is kind of interesting, but also makes sense in a sports car. So this lever here on the outside, you can pump this to adjust your seat height, and then the one towards the center, you can grab that and slide your seat forward and back. It also has manual thigh adjustment, so you can pull this out to help support your thighs. This is really nice on longer road trips, especially if you're using cruise control and you're just kind of relaxing both your legs. So the manual thigh adjustment is also really a nice feature. So one thing the Audi S3 definitely lacks in the interior is storage space. There is a small cubby in the door where we can fit some things here and have it revealed. But as we look at, say, the center console, this storage space back here is very small. All I have in there right now is sunglasses, a laser measure, and my Draggy, which is charging. So there is another USB as well as an auxiliary jack within here, and a nice cutout so that if you had a device plugged in here, you could still run it out and say your passenger or whoever could be on that device. But overall, pretty small storage space in here, so that's kind of disappointing. What's kind of interesting to me is this is actually where I keep my sunglasses, because they don't fit all that well up here, and there's no sunglass holder up here, which was pretty surprising. So this has essentially just become the spot to hold my sunglasses. And then moving across to the glove box, there's not a ton of storage in here either. This is where you would have your CD player as well as your place to put in your SD cards for your map updates, as well as a SIM slot if you have Audi Connect or you want to connect this to a cell service so you have data within the vehicle. But overall, I pretty much just have the manual in here and then my license, registration, all that good stuff as well. But that pretty much takes up the whole glove compartment, because by the time I fit something in here, like just a small snow scraper and a couple of papers, it really fills up the entire vehicle. But overall, the style of the interior is obviously very minimalistic and simple, but it definitely works. It's well proportioned for the vehicle. It has all the features you'd expect in this price range and then some. And overall, it actually looks really good in person. So underneath the hood of the S3, we have the third generation of the EA888 engine. So this engine is also used over on the Volkswagen side in the Golf, the GTI, as well as the Golf R, as well as the Audi A3. In the S3, it is a more sporty tune, as well as tuned to a more sporty transmission to allow for quicker 0 to 60s and a higher output. As I mentioned, this vehicle is paired to a resonator delete kit, which comes from the factory to help enhance the exhaust sound. So let's go ahead and listen to it right now. So it revs up a little bit, gets a little bit of a burble, then returns to idle. Especially when we're in park, it'll keep the RPMs lower. In park, we do have a rev limiter around 4,000 RPM, so we won't be able to get too high in the exhaust range, but we'll also try to neutral to see if that helps. But if we just do soft accelerations like that, it keeps the valves closed. And when we get around 3,000 RPM, you can hear it start to open. And then we hit our rev limiter. But if we do some harder revving, we'll start to hear the exhaust a little bit better. Driveway shot here as we're in with the transmission in sport mode, just pulling away at kind of normal throttle level. And then again in sport mode, but we'll do a harder acceleration this time. Let's spend some time driving the vehicle now and go over kind of the performance and the drivability and why this vehicle is so much fun while still being practical and efficient, because that is what makes it special, the fun factor. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to want to switch back to our sport display. So we have our tachometer in the middle. And then I just want to point out a couple features quick. When we shift the vehicle into drive, there's two options. You can see it says drive/S, and then there's this little arrow down. It took me a while to understand this, but when we shift it down, it changes and toggles between regular driving mode and sport mode for the transmission. So in sport mode, it has much more aggressive downshifts. It lets it rev up higher on upshifts and kind of more burbles and backfires from the exhaust in sport mode, where drive is just more of a regular driving experience, if you will, even though the rest of the vehicle is in dynamic mode. But for now, we'll start off in normal drive and take a look at what that is like. So let's start off by driving. We'll just start in dynamic mode, but regular drive. So the transmission is just in normal drive mode. And we'll just go drive around a bit so I can talk about some of the characteristics of the vehicle. I pretty much always drive the vehicle in dynamic mode because I appreciate the heavier steering, and the suspension really doesn't get too harsh compared to what it would be in, say, comfort mode. But overall in comfort mode, the steering gets a little too light for my taste. So I really just prefer the heavy steering, especially with this beautiful leather wrapped flat bottom steering wheel. But even just at kind of low RPMs cruising around like this, you can already hear that there is a little bit of an engine tone or exhaust tone, and that's really enhanced by having the resonator delete. Overall inside the vehicle, road and wind noise is pretty minimal, and when you have the audio down, you can actually hear the exhaust pretty nicely, which to someone like me or someone who would buy a sports car like an Audi S3 is something you want. But when you're cruising on the highway, it kicks it down into a high enough gear, low enough RPMs that the exhaust is nice and quiet, the beautiful Bang & Olufsen surround sound system a bit, and you won't hear any drone from the exhaust. But as I'm just cruising around here, you can see the transmission shifts pretty early. We get a little bit of road noise on this road because it's a very loud concrete road, so it's just kind of characteristic of this road. But with the Continental Sport tires, it's really not too much for road noise. But the transmission is shifting pretty early, keeps the RPMs low. We don't really hear the exhaust that much. So it's nice and calm, but not the most fun experience. So if I shift down the transmission to sport, immediately we downshift. It holds the RPMs higher, and listen. as we approach the light, it has these much more aggressive downshifts, much like you would have if you're driving in manual mode with the paddle shifters, but it's doing it all for you. And when we take off, much more aggressive shifts, and we get some really nice burbles out of the exhaust. Absolutely so much fun to drive. Downshifts as soon as we hit the brake, prepares for the turn. Handles the roundabout nicely. So the handling is another thing that was improved in the facelift models of the Audi S3. The all-wheel drive system has been tweaked to send more power to the rear wheels in the facelift models, so it allows for a much more spirited drive and allows you to even get into a little bit of an oversteer situation with this all-wheel drive system. But yet it can divide the power between the wheels very efficiently when it needs to, say in winter driving or inclement weather situations. But the best thing is it allows for improved handling and improved fun when you're in dynamic mode. And then even with this pretty aggressive 7-speed dual clutch transmission, the daily driving of it is very livable. It handles low speeds and parking lot situations pretty well. There is a little bit of lurchiness, but that's pretty typical of any dual clutch transmission. This kind of lurchiness and aggressiveness is enhanced when you have the transmission in sport mode, but as always, you can easily switch down to dynamic mode, and it's much smoother if you're trying to do low speed maneuvers through city driving or parking lot maneuvers. But generally, I love to keep it in sport mode. I think it's a lot more fun. Alright, so here we're approaching the highway on-ramp. Try to let this car ahead of us get a little bit of space. But the confidence of the all-wheel drive system, you can really hold this corner tight, floor it. And can get up to speed real quick. It's just such an exciting drive. Audi advertises the 0-60 of the S3 at 4.6 seconds, which Audi is known to be a little conservative in their numbers, so I'll have to test it myself eventually, but it should be right around 4.5 seconds, which is very quick for a 4-cylinder car. And if you're looking for something even quicker, that's why Audi offers the RS3, which is a whole different beast of a vehicle. But at that time, you start to sacrifice some of the repairability, lower maintenance costs, and the just practicality of the S3, because it gets way more expensive and more expensive to maintain when you step up to an RS3. So to me, the S3 is actually the sweet spot. And with that, we conclude our review of the 2018 Audi S3, which is this week's featured car review. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I'd love to hear in the comments down below what you thought of the 2018 Audi S3, as well as what vehicle you would like us to check out next in our featured car review. But as always, I'm Thomas, this is Fox Automotive. Thank you for watching, guys. We really appreciate you watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and make sure you subscribe to us for more great content. And we look forward to seeing you in our next video.